My guest today is Corbie Mitleid. She's a psychic medium, a past life specialist, and a channeler. Her career spans the globe with clients worldwide. Her talents as an intuitive are featured in the best-selling books Clean Out Your Life Closet, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road, and You've Got Magic, Who Needs a Genie? She inspires and encourages others to use their intuition and to be open to the idea that there is more out there than what you can see. Unless, and I added this part, unless you're one of those that can see ghosts. Her attitude is, I'm not special. You can do what I do. Welcome to my show, Corbie.
It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So tell me, when did you realize you could do what you do? And how did you start calling yourself a psychic?
Okay, this is what I call the 30-second elevator speech. When I was 9, I read a book called The Witch Family by Eleanor Estes, and I thought, ooh, there's magic in the world. I need to go find it. Fast forward to 1973 when I was a senior in high school. That was the year Live and Let Die came out with Jane Seymour as Solitaire the Reader, and Spencer Gifts had the James Bond 007 tarot deck, and I bought it because we were all hippies then. You had your elephant bell bottoms and your David Crosby fringe jacket and your deck. Now, 5 years later...
I was just being born, yeah.
Yep. 5 years later, everybody else had moved on to roller skates and disco balls. I was still reading the cards because they absolutely fascinated me. So for 20 years, I read for friends, making sure that I could keep my ego out of the way and be a clear channel for the information. All of a sudden, in the early to mid 1990s, I could do hands-on healing and talk to dead people with no training. That's when I hung out my shingle part-time, even though I was doing other things. I've been an actress, an author, an inspirational speaker, a video producer, a legal assistant, a writer for the graphic novel series ElfQuest, an executive recruiter, but always the psychic work on the time. That changed on 9/11. As I watched the towers burn, I turned to my husband and I said, I need to do this work full time. People need to know there's something else out there. And he said, I believe in you, go do it. Since then, it's been 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. I read up to 1,000 people a year, and I get to get up in the morning. I don't have to get up in the morning. That's the real key.
Nice when something happens that changes your direction in life and makes it worthwhile.
Yes.
To which, before we get into I told people I was doing a podcast with psychics, and they want to ask you all these questions about the stock market and this and that. I'm like, of course.
Of course, they always do.
Yeah. More importantly, my intention with a show like this is, and this is your intention too, to some degree, tell me, how can someone develop their own... Well, first of all, can anyone develop a psychic ability, or do you have to be born with it?
You are born with it. We are all wired like the same house plan. The way I explain it to people is we also all have 10 fingers. All of us can pick out chopsticks on the piano. Some of us are fascinated by the idea of playing the piano, so we study music, we practice our scales, and we get very competent. 1 in 100 million is Elton John, but we all have 10 fingers. So yes, anybody can do what I do if they get the work done and they get out of their own way.
One of your podcasts, you have your own podcast show too, right?
Yes, it's on hiatus now, but yes, it's out there still.
And I'll probably put that in the show notes. One of your podcasts, I was looking at the titles, Life Purpose. Everyone's got one. What's yours? So tell me, Corbie, how can someone using their 10 fingers, like we just described, how can someone on their own, how can they find what their life purpose is?
Well, it's what I call their sentence of passion. Your sentence of passion is not who you are or what you do or even how you do it. It's your vapor trail. When you go skidding into heaven on bald tires and fumes in the tank, and God hands you a beer and says, so, you want to say, I did this. Isn't it cool? Now, my sentence of passion is cross the bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. When I can take somebody from point A to point B, when they thought they couldn't make it, whack them on their shoulders, say, here are your wings, you don't need a flight plane. I am living my purpose. And I've done it in everything I do, it's not your job. So, how can someone else find their purpose? Well, there are a couple ways to do it. You could always do a deep dish consultation with me, but that's the expensive way. And I always encourage people, don't spend more money than you have to. So in my book, Clean Out Your Life Closet, there is a chapter on getting clear on your purpose. And I give you 6 questions to ask yourself that will help you figure it out. First thing is, what has your life been about? Here's some examples. If you always had a roller coaster relationship with money, how has that shaped your idea of prosperity? Do you feel you are doomed to a marginal existence? Do you want to make money no matter what? Or do you want to figure out how to live a more simplistic life? If you're always the one who stands up for the underdog, whether or not you win, how does justice look to you? See, so it's not simply, I believe in justice. It's how does it work in your life? I want abundance. Are you thinking money? Are you thinking time? Are you thinking? So you really have to dig in. Excuse me. The next one is, where does your happiness live? And think about the times in your life where you were just blossoming, where you knew you felt wonderful. Some people, if they had to speak in front of an audience, would think, oh, that was awful. I couldn't possibly do it. Me, it's like pushing a button and the spotlight goes on. I adore interaction with people I don't know. So that's an example. Where does your happiness live? Third one is, go ahead.
And where doesn't it live? The other direction I like to, it works for me. I'm like, also, when it's difficult to tell, what don't you like? Oh, you know what? You really don't like this. That's clear. So just toss that.
It is. But, I'm going to disagree with you. And this is why.
Okay.
We always look at what we don't want. But
Mhm.
the universe is a short order cook with no imagination. If we say we really don't want to be in debt, the universe hears debt and orders it. So instead, you go, I really want to have enough and to spare. And then that's
Absolutely.
what the universe orders. So part of it is also where you find comfort. And that's not potato chips and video games. That's, for me, I find joy in word crafting.
Hmm.
I love writing.
Mhm.
My stepmother, whom I adored, she had a talent for landscaping. She could make anything grow. So that's an important part of what you came in to do. Use the talents that you love.
Mhm.
What crises changed your life? Did you live through Hurricane Katrina? Were you in a war zone? With me, I've done the cancer dance 3 times. Those things will also change how you work in the world, how you respond.
Mhm.
How do you learn or work best? Now that's simple. That's, are you left brain or right brained? Like me, do you want to be in front of people all the time, or do you want to be in a back office somewhere creating? And the last thing is, what do you want to be remembered for? And you don't have to look famous for that. Some people want to be remembered as that wonderful, crazy aunt who blew people's minds open with wonderful questions that helped them grow. Me, my whole thing is, I want to inspire people to show them how huge life can be, but I want them to laugh at the same time because I'm
Mhm.
funny. So those are 6 questions that you can ask yourself to start finding what you are here to do.
Nice. And then what tips can you give people to use their intuition to help with that? How do you use your intuition day to day?
It's any muscle that you work with. I tell people, you can put it in your iPhone or something, but I prefer having with me a little book, something like this, and a pen. And every time I get an intuitive hit, I write down what that hit was and what I did. For instance, if I got a thing that said, don't leave the house, give it an extra half an hour before you go on your route, I write it down if I decided to listen to that or not. It could be that there was a car accident that would have backed everything up if I had left the normal time, but 30 minutes later, it's all cleared.
Mm.
So that's how you see not only when your intuition is working, but if you have specialties with it. Do you always know who's calling? Do you always um, remember, I need this from the grocery store when it wasn't on the list? And you didn't even think about it, but you go home and you find out, yes, we only had 2 eggs.
Hmm.
So think of it as a playground, not I got it right or got it wrong. Because a child does not try to draw a picture and then say, I'm terrible because the flower doesn't look right. He goes, how about this one? He just realizes things are going.
Yeah.
So understand that, yes, you've got the intuition. Do not rationalize your way out of it. Do not say, oh, well, the reason I thought that was. Just
Hmm.
accept its intuition. Because again, the more you use it, like any other um, muscle,
Hmm.
the more likely it is you're going to get really good at it.
And trust it, right?
Yes, have fun with it. Have fun with it. You know, intuition is a lovely gift from the universe, not a homework assignment.
I mean, if you keep doubting yourself, oh, I was doing the homework like Corbie said, and I wrote it in, oh, but it didn't turn out good. I tell people,
You'll
how do you
stop,
know? Yeah, yeah.
right? You're going to stop working it. You'll always think you're wrong and you will lose. You'll shut it down.
Plus, they
You'll shut
focus
it
on the
down.
bad, meaning, say they used their intuition, they were going to drive someplace, and then they got a flat tire, and then they go,
Hmm.
see, I shouldn't have driven there. When really it was because they got the flat tire that they stayed home and got the phone call. I'm just making this up, Corby, of course.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
It's
and they didn't
exactly right.
know that the actual outcome happened differently than they expected, and it's a good outcome because they trusted their intuition. They only focus on it not working the way they thought their intuition was going to tell them it should work.
I'm going to give you a wonderful story with that. Um, for a long time, my upstairs crew kept saying, you really ought to come off the road because I used to be on the road 45 weekends a year. My nickname was the Travel Channel, but I loved it. I loved the crowds. I loved everyone I got to speak to. I loved, being a Hilton Diamond. You walk into a Hilton hotel and, we're not worthy. But what happened was finally, July of 2019, I got a herniated disc and pinched nerve. And baby, that makes having triplets feel like a tea party.
Hmm.
After about 4 months, we finally got me, I would say, 80% back. But the doctor said, we're really sorry, but your career is over. You cannot drive 10 hours one way anymore, and you can't load in your gear. So I scrambled to get everything online, which I did by about January of 2020. And what happened a month later, but what I called the years of murder hornet bingo and hold my beer. All of my friends who were still just on the road, their businesses tanked. Mine just kept going and has never looked back.
Right.
The universe kept telling me something, and I kept ignoring that intuition until it finally had to say, we'll fix this right here.
Yeah, it's one of those
Boom.
things you get angry about when it's trying to help you out. You can't see it, you can't see the outcome yet. So you got to trust your
That's right.
intuition.
Yes.
So,
And trust that the universe doesn't want to squish you. It
good
has
point.
things in mind that you need to know.
Yes, it's a helpful universe, not a.
Mhm.
So tell me about what is a soul plan?
All right. A soul plan is something that I worked on with Robert Schwartz in his breakthrough series about life between lives, your soul's plan, your soul's gift, and your soul's love. The idea is we do pre birth planning. We decide who we're going to have down here. We decide what things we want to learn. And it gives you a better idea about karma.
Real quick, Corby,
Yeah,
I'm on the page with you, but I'm gonna guess a lot of people haven't heard the idea like you plan your life before you come. That
I'm
could be a
about to
new.
explain that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Um, Number one, yes, we all have multiple lives. You really think you're smart enough to get it done in one? No, my darlings, nobody is. So, in the between life period, the soul decides what it wants to work on Earth because you can learn a lot of things in a more duality session or a three-dimensional world where things are not as clear as they are when you're out of the body and you're on the astral. So, A lot of it has to do with karma, and karma is not carrot and stick, bad and good. It just isn't. Karma is 5 things: healing, service, contrast, unbalanced energy, and healing your beliefs. So your life is planned with your higher self, your soul, and it works with other people that you're going to be with in your life. For instance, my father was my best friend. He and I shared the same birthday. He normally comes in, same generation, as a best friend. But this time, my soul was planning a very challenging life and knew I would need a best friend as a father. So that soul agreed with my soul to do the father-daughter role in this life. Okay? Um, when you understand that things that happen to us are not because we've been good or bad, but they're learning situations, you look at things very differently. And I like to use the example of Ryan White. Ryan White was a young man who got AIDS from a blood transfusion back in the 1980s when we really didn't know that much. And people treated his family like absolute horrific pariahs. He had trouble even being allowed to go to school. They had to move in order for that to happen. Somehow they became friends with Elton John. Elton basically adopted the family. And when Ryan died, Elton played at his funeral. Ryan's courage had so moved Elton that Elton determined that he was going to go and get out of his addictions for drugs, alcohol, sex, all of it.
Hmm.
And when he came out of rehab, he created the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which has raised over $500 million of money towards worldwide AIDS research and healing. Now, in the old days, people would have looked at Ryan's life and said, oh, he must have been a horrible person. Look at what God did to him. Now, when we understand those 5 things, Ryan's soul said, well, that could be a short life and a tough one, but look what we can create as a result. So we say his karma is that of service. And he was a courageous soul.
Yeah.
So when you look at a soul plan, it's life challenges. Why did I get cancer? Why was I born into poverty? Why can I not form coherent relationships?
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at what those lessons are. And I pull down past lives that help illustrate that. And sometimes I can even channel their own souls for them to talk to their higher selves. So
Mm-hmm.
that gives people a chance to make changes and understand the tough parts of their life now.
And the thought that just occurred to me with Ryan's story is we all might, at least I do sometimes, I have this idea in my head that my soul plan's about me. Like, what have I got to learn? Whereas Ryan's story just, to me, what I got out of it is it's not about me. His soul came in was more about everybody else, what he could do to,
It could be either one.
or
It
either
could
one.
be either one. That's right. My own particular soul plan was about me. And it's why my life has been very difficult. I've gone through 3 bouts of breast cancer, 2 divorces, rape, poverty, abuse. But there were things in my soul plan that I needed to learn to become resilient. And that's why those things happen. So now here I am at 70, 20 years clean from the cancer, in a wonderful 3rd marriage. And I've been with this man a quarter century. And everything I went through has made me a more compassionate, understanding counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my soul chose to do all of that.
Now, speaking of which, you say you don't believe in good news or bad news with the
Mm-hmm.
reading, rather than its opportunities and challenges, and that you learn this after going through the cancer 3 times.
Yes,
And that, moreover, your job is to, you say, give people the tools and the courage they need to deal with situations, but that everything else is free will and up to them.
that's right. I am not a fortune teller. Yes, I am a certified tarot master because I've been reading for over 50 years. But don't come to me and say, is my business going to succeed? Yes or no?
You're
Because
giving them all the power. You're giving your power away.
I'm giving my power away or they are.
They are. You're giving you the power to tell them if their business
Right.
is going to work out or
And
not.
more than that, when they do that, that sets them up for the bad cheating psychics that go, oh, well, you see,
Oh,
you have a family curse. Here's a $600 candle. We can fix this. Okay.
oh,
Which is why I tell my people, don't ask yes or no, ask how. So, for instance, if you said, I want to open up a health food store, I would not flip a few cards and say, wait until October and fire the redhead. There would be a card for you, a card for the energy around the business, a card for the brick and mortar location to look for, how to market it, clients, competition, staff, finances, what you need to know, and best possible outcome. That gives you so much information. You are able to take it like a rocket pack on your back and meet the challenges and make things happen.
mhm. So speaking of tarot, uh, tarot cards, I think most people know what those are by now. If not, you can tell them. I use them a bit. Not very good at it. I pull a card, I look at the image, the picture, is it good or I kind of
Mm-hmm.
do this, is it good or bad? Tell me what people clearly going to a professional tarot reader like much better than doing your own, I think. But tell me if you're doing your own good and bad things like what to do, what not to do.
I will sometimes do options. Let's say you're saying, I had this interview for a job. I'm not sure what I should do, how the job would go. I may pull three cards for if you take the job, but three cards if you don't. And the energy won't necessarily be everything's good, everything bad, but it will give you an idea of what may be ahead on that path, again, so you can make the choice. Now, tarot cards are very good for what I call the everyday tour bus. House card, job, kids, okay, gotcha, put me here, now what? But I also use 7 or 8 different oracle decks. Now, what are oracle decks? They're different from tarot. They don't have a specific number, they don't have suits. They are simply beautiful ways to channel your intuition. And each person who has developed the decks has put their own spin on it. So, for instance, I've got the Fairies Oracle, and that's for the deeper spiritual questions. I've got my deck with Ganesh, the Indian Lord of Obstacles, which is a very compassionate deck. I've got a deck by John Gray, who did Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That's about karma and relationships.
And
It's always,
the
go
benefit of
ahead.
that versus the tarot is pretty straightforward. Like you pull a certain number or a certain character, it's like can be death, like literally the death card or six of what?
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
No.
Nope. There are three cards that weird out rookies: Death, the Devil, and the Tower, which is why I explain the allegory to them. You talk about the Death card. That is death of an old way of life, death of what you've outgrown, death of what was never you in the first place. It's change.
Hmm.
The Devil card does not mean Mr. Horns in a tail. It is being constantly bedeviled by something, someone, or some situation, or holding yourself back from your highest and best. And the Tower
Yeah.
card is not necessarily doom, gloom, and destruction. I tell people I want you to think about it like an imploding sports stadium. Boston Red Sox want to build a new stadium. They got to blow up Fenway first and clear the ground. So the universe is going to be getting things out of your life that are no longer serving you, and you have to clear the ground and move forward.
Yeah. On the death card, I as a climber, I was going to go do something that had never been done by
Mm-hmm,
myself and
mm-hmm,
spent 2 years planning and thinking and going, this is like crazy and trying to Google Earth it to see if can it be climbed. And
mm-hmm,
as you know, Google can only tell you so much Earth. Um, decided to do it. I stopped by my brother's house on the way. It's a long drive and he's on the way. It's a 10-hour drive.
mm-hmm.
The other night and in the morning, he's like, whoa, what are you going to do? He's up, he's working his real job. I'm doing my thing. Like we talked about my purpose. I feel like I'm going to go do this climb. While he's in the shower, I get the tarot cards out.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what card I pulled? The death
Obviously, it was
card,
death.
the death.
Mm-hmm,
So, well, he comes down. Are you going to go or not? I'm like, no, I just pulled the death card. And without skipping a beat, he's like, you can't trust that thing. It's a game. Now, mind you, he's the skeptical engineer type. And
Mhm.
coming from that, and I knew it was coming from that direction, but it was like, well, here's my intuition. I think my intuition cut in. He's your brother. You showed him the pictures. You used your rational mind to get an objective, somebody else's opinion that knows you. Um, he's your brother. He would tell you no if it was you were going to die. So I went and it was great. I did it. To which
Mhm.
somebody later told me, like you did, Corby, the death card is not that literal. The death card means getting rid of the old, a new way of life, something not just always negative. But nonetheless,
Exactly.
I just question for you is are these oracle cards a little more gentler and not so black or white unless you really
They can be.
mm,
They can be. For instance, I have one deck that is indigenous, First Nation based, and they have nothing to do with swords, pentacles, cups, or wands. They are messages from spirit
nice, nice.
with a different methodology. Now, you're going to laugh, but I also have a deck for kids. If I'm at a psychic fair, and when I am, I'm usually booked solid. And let's say there's a woman who is sitting with me. She couldn't find a babysitter for her little 2 year old Muffin. So Muffin's on her lap. And Muffin keeps going, Mommy, 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 card, card, card. And she says, Corby, would you let Muffin pull a card, please? If all I have is my tarot deck, what am I going to do if
Scare them.
Muffin pulls the death card? Oh, look, Muffin's
Yeah.
death. So I've got something called cat wisdom,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's got pictures of kitties and squirrels and puppies. And here's a card that says, "Don't worry, that's you can show Muffin, and Muffin's fine." And then you go back to the reading with your mom. That's that kind of thing
Because
is what
also
I
the visual is
discuss.
real important, the images, right? In terms of
Yes,
interpreting it, how you feel.
yes, absolutely. That's the kind of thing, though, that most people who want to do this professionally don't really think about, which
Mm.
is why I wrote my third book, You've Got the Magic Who Needs a Genie. It's everything I learned from being on the road for 18 years. It is a business book for intuitives. There wasn't another one out there. I said, I'm going to give them everything I know.
So if someone were to come to you or go to somebody else for a professional reading, I think you gave us one back there, no yes or no answers. Ask
Mhm.
how. What are
Yes.
your top two rules that you suggest people follow to get a useful psychic reading?
Well, the first one is to remember even the best of us are only 85% accurate. The only one 100% accurate is God, and he's not doing phone readings or psychic fairs this week. But what I tell people is if you're going to go to a psychic fair, for instance, I tell you, you have to be good puppies. What does that mean? First thing is you do your walkies. You go in and you walk around the perimeter and you just get a feel for who's there. Second thing is go get paper trained, which means go to anybody who looks even remotely interesting and get a rack card or a flyer or something like that. Now, when you do that, we're all going to have front people. But remember, we hired them to say that they love us. My front person, the first one I had, was the wonderful Laura Spickerman, who was my husband's office manager Monday through Friday. You think she's going to dismiss his museum director on the weekends? Probably not. So, what you want to do is you want to find our testimonial books. We've all got them.
Mm.
Are we good? Are we funny? Are we kind? Do we have specialty? Children, dogs, dead people. Um, were we accurate and would people come back? But the final thing is, and I cannot stress this enough, checking at your heart chakra. You are putting your hard earned money on the table. If the psychic doesn't feel like they have a brain in their head, they really care about what they're going to tell you, or they don't care about good information, don't go there, no matter how cool the wiki woo looks on the table.
Mm.
That is not your reader.
So when you're doing readings or other people
Mhm.
doing them for other people, tell me about this idea that you have to protect your energy from can somebody be like are you vulnerable when you're doing when you're doing a reading?
Man, Daniel, I have been doing this for so long. that I've got my upstairs crew and they snap to attention, they fly patrol. Um, I don't particularly worry about it.
But why would
Um,
somebody else who's not so advanced experience the team's not behind them what does it mean exactly? Like other dark energies out there unseen are jumping on the bandwagon? It's an opportunity to
neg-
get in.
Negative stuff. I mean, let's look at the idea of Ouija boards. Okay. Everyone always asks me about them. I hate them.
I forgot about
Ouija
them. I don't
boards.
use them. I would
Oh,
never
no,
use
baby.
one.
Ouija boards, when you don't know how to ground center and shield, that's like throwing your door open in a strange neighborhood and yelling free beer. You
Hmm.
don't know who's out there, but they heard you and they're coming. A lot of people assume Ouija boards are fine and let's just use them. And, they watched Daisy and Anna on Downton Abbey channel, Matthew's
Oh,
dead
so let me
fiance who wished
let
them
me
well.
let me see if my pictures if I'm modeling this right in my head. When you go
Hmm.
to a Ouija board or when you set any intention to ask for help from some higher guidance, you're opening
Hmm.
the channel. That's keyword
Hmm.
channel, right? And that's like now opening the door, and all these everybody else
That's
who's
right.
out there can get in. Basically, is what's happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, it's why with Ouija boards, I talk against them. I really hate them. And of course, when I talk about this with an audience, somebody says, "But they're just toys,"
I was about to
and I
say
look
just
at
a
them and I
piece of
said,
wood or a toy. What's but the object somehow has meaning and symbology and
"What I do is I say, okay, who here has a kid or a grandchild under 10? Hands go up. I say, you. What's the kid's name? Josh. How old is Josh? Josh is 8. I said, okay, fine. Joshy comes and says, Grandma, I got all A's on my report card. You said we could go get a toy. Let's go. And he takes you to the toy department and he drags you over to a box that says, My First Chainsaw. It's in the toy department. You're going to let him play with it by himself? I don't think so. A Ouija board, if, if you ground center and shield, yeah, you could probably use them. I mean, Jane Roberts used it to get Seth. Esther Hicks used it to first get Abraham. But you must learn how to ground, center, and shield. Those are basic boot camp things that
and what is so
everybody
special
needs to
about this
learn.
Ouija board? Historically, it just
What's
it's
so special about Santa Claus? It's a thought form.
mm,
Ouija boards have been used incorrectly for so long that it effectively created a channel to the really lower level entities that hang out at the corner of Akashic and Karma and say, hey, Sid, look at those guys. Let's go play.
I see.
I have had to handle 2 hysterical teenagers who, when they put their hands on their planchette and said, who's there, not knowing how to ground center and shield, all of a sudden the planchette moved backwards very fast. And what came out was, I have an axe and I'm here to kill you. It's not
Mm,
their Uncle
nice,
Danny.
nice.
Okay.
Yes. So
Um,
so say we're not using a Ouija board, but we're still
mhm.
doing some kind of reading. Um, Stay away from Ouija
Ground
boards,
center and
folks.
shield.
That's
Yes.
how you
That,
protect the space. Keep the
yes. Whether it's you use crystals, whether you have an invocation that you always
mm.
say to call in the guides. Um, but grounding and centering means you are completely in your body. You are completely settled where you are. And shielding is like an energy egg. Um,
It's
the
making me want to go
more,
to a professional. It's kind of like doing surgery or going to the doctor trying to do my own stitches instead of going to the emergency room.
but you can learn to do this. There are tons of books. In
Mm,
fact, um, one of the books that I used when I was learning is still out, and I recommend it all the time. And it's called Opening to Channel.
mm,
It's by Sanaya Roman and Dwayne Packer. Subtitle, How to Connect with Your Guides.
nice.
It teaches you how to stay safe when they're really your guides, when they're not, how to know exercises. And
Well,
I
that was the
recommend
last
that
thing I
because,
wanted. Sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
That was the last thing I wanted to ask you about too, was the spirit guides. Something I know about, and I was taught it, but maybe a lot of people don't know what a spirit guide, or sometimes is an angel the same thing? Are they used interchangeably, or is a spirit guide and an angel different?
Do you remember Venn diagrams in math? You had the 2 circles and then that little bit in the middle. Well, the Venn diagram for spirit guides and angels is like a donut. The middle hole, those are angels. There, you got at least one that's with you from birth to death. They basically have your name in the back of their tunic like camp tags. I belong to Daniel. Spirit guides are the donut because they change, as we grow. You don't have the same teacher from kindergarten to PhD. You generally will have more than one. They can be deceased loved ones, avatars, ETs, energy signature. They can be a lot of things. So we have both.
Cool.
Um, your My original spirit guide, when I really started contacting in the 90s, was someone that I flew with as a pilot in World War One. Now, do I still have contact with Carl Amel and all the rest of the people I knew then? Yes, they're like dear friends. But I have switched, and my main guide now is my angel Baruchiel. It's a higher level of energy, it's a higher vibe, and it's what I am working with since I am putting this energy out into the world on a global fashion.
It's your guardian angel. Do you call
Yes.
it a guardian angel?
Yeah, they don't care what we call it.
Mhm. They guard
So,
you, protect you, help
mhm,
you, teach you, whatever the word is.
yes,
Um,
exactly.
um, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you'd like to mention?
Um, you pretty much covered a lot of things. It's everything that I do. I will explain a little bit about past lives.
Okay.
Why don't we remember past lives? It's because we're meant to live this one. If you're a janitor in Des Moines and all of a sudden you realize you used to be Napoleon Bonaparte, are you really going to want to play with a mop? No. Also, people come to me, I can't tell you how many. I must have been Anne Boleyn because I can't wear turtlenecks. No, my darlings, that's not how it works. I don't just go fish for past lives. If you have an obsession, a phobia, a situation, then that's a legitimate time to go and explore. For instance, a woman came to me and said, I'm really worried about my son. He's 29. He still won't make any decisions without me. He won't live more than a mile away. What is going on? That's not right. And I can download past lives very fast. So I went upstairs, and in about 10 seconds, I said, okay, it's 1944. I'm seeing Utah Beach. So this is D-Day. Your son is on the beach. He's a soldier. He's down. He's got shrapnel in his leg and he's bleeding out. You're his commanding officer. You scramble over the dune. You pull him to safety. You take some shrapnel too, but you both live. I opened my eyes. She's very pale. She says, can you see my rank? I said, yes, you were a sergeant. She goes, he's called me sergeant since he was 3 years old, and we have never known why.
Yep.
That's an example of when a past life is useful.
And then what did she do with that?
She went home and explained it to her son so that he would understand that was then, this is now. He is a different person. He has his
Oh,
abilities, and try to help him to get to be more independent.
nice. Yeah, I can see why going to a psychic for that would be a tool you can use to get past a challenge and not just, will I win the lottery or which Circle K should I
Yes.
go to buy a lottery ticket? Yeah.
Right.
Like it's
But
not about winning
there's
yeah.
no, but there's an important difference. And I want people to understand that. Most people know past life regression. That's what the word they know.
Hmm.
That is when you're the one who is hypnotized and you go up into the Akashic and you wander around.
Oh, right. Yep.
You must you must only do that with a certified hypnotherapist or past life regressionist, because if all of a sudden you find yourself reliving a traumatic death or a horrible situation, they know how to pull you out so you don't actually relive it, you just observe. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, what I do is retrieval. You tell me, why do I have this problem? I quickly go up to the Akashic, bring down the book, and say, read chapter 2. You don't have to do it. It is less visceral, but may still give you the information you seek.
So kind of like back to the soul plan. Before you came
Mm-hmm,
in, you created this plan. It's quite
mm-hmm,
detailed. You spent a lot of time, you had a lot of time to do it. And
mm-hmm,
basically, the service you're doing is, like you're frustrated because you had to forget the plan for the plan to work. If you knew the plan, it wouldn't, you'd have already, if you already read the book, you wouldn't read it again, right? What you're doing for people is really going, stick with the plan. Here's why. I'll give you one page of the book or one nugget to go. You're still in the story, see? And so you don't give up.
We don't always have the same plan from life to life. Sometimes there are threads, but sometimes you can be one and done. Um, Going
People die
back to,
suddenly, and I'm kind of like, wow, they're gone like so fast. Like, what happened? And I think to myself, were they really? I mean, just they're just done. One day they're not, the next day they are. Like, how's it work? And then I'm like, I hope I'm not done tomorrow. I'm not scared to death, but I'm kind of like, you know,
what's kind of hard for people to understand is we're just a costume and an act. The way I explain it is Matt Smith. Let's take a look at the actor Matt Smith. For years, he was the 11th Doctor on Doctor Who. He was my doctor. And when he hung up the bow tie and the fez, then he put on the military thing and he was Prince Philip in the first two seasons of The Crown. And then when he was done with that, he hung up that. And now he's some whack job in House of the Dragon. So the doctor, the prince, and the whack job don't know each other. They're completely different people, but they're all brought to life by Matt Smith.
mm-hmm.
The doctor, the prince, and the whack job are like incarnations, but Matt Smith is the soul that makes them happen. And when the costumes are off, they disappear. Does that mean we just disappear when we die? No, because we're really inside here. The soul is really inside. It's like, do you remember the kinds of things you did when you were in high school that were so important to you? You
I
know,
mean, if
but that's who you were then.
in the way you put it with the actor taking on different characters, it's your
Mhm.
soul taking on all these different people, so he can
That's
learn
right.
all, or she can learn all these lessons or have all these experiences. It reminds me of Marlon Brando once told Johnny Depp this when he was at the middle of his fame years ago. You got to be careful, son. How many characters you put in your head? You can only take so many.
That is very true. That is very, very true.
So tell me about your book, Clean Out Your Life Closet.
All right, that was the first one I wrote. And I wrote that because, look, I will give $100 cash to anybody who can legitimately prove that they have never read a self help book in their life, because we all have. And I remember the first one I read when I was 13. And I remember the paragraph. Now, remember, this is the 1960s. Judy has a groovy wardrobe. Her makeup is fab, but her hair is far out. But nobody likes Judy because Judy's fat. In that first paragraph, hundreds of thousands of American teenagers were told, you are utterly worthless unless you're skinny.
Hmm. Wow.
Nothing else about you matters. And unfortunately, that is the way it still is with a lot of self help books. It's do everything I tell you and it all gets better. But they don't know you. When I was doing my research, there was one book that said you have to get up 2 hours early to do yoga and avoid all foods with leptin. I'm sorry, if you are a single mom with preschool kids and a job in Milwaukee, you are not going to do that. So that book sets you up to fail right there. What I do is I say, okay, here's some of the dumb things I did. Here's a client story, and here's some suggestions. But at the end of each chapter, I give you what I call the adventure pages, which is where you get to
I like this adventure
make
pages.
decisions.
Sounds fun.
Yes, um, you can't find the answers in the book. You have to go with your own life.
Hmm.
So, for instance, in the chapter that talks about when perfect destroys good, okay, then some of the questions I ask you are, where do you beat yourself up most often? Why? Reimagine one of those times with the idea that good can triumph over perfect. What does that look like? How would your life change if you stopped thinking perfection was the only correct response to a project or situation? That enables you to directly look at your own life, forgive yourself, understand what happened, reframe it. So that if you do all those chapter adventure pages, by the end of the book, it's your own personal manual. And your best
Hmm.
friend could buy the book the same day, do all the answers, but her book will then become her personal manual because it is based on her life experiences. There's not another book out there like that.
Kind of like intuiting or writing down your soul plan a little bit
Mm-hmm,
related to
mm-hmm,
the soul plan. Nice.
mm-hmm.
Also, you can get a free chapter download on your website of that book.
You absolutely can. All of my books.
Nice.
Psychic Yellow Brick Road, Life Closet, and Genie. There's always a chapter available to you to see if you like the book.
And I'll have those in the show notes too.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Corbie?
I think we've covered pretty much everything that I do.
We're not going to cover if the stock market's going to crash. I told people straight up.
I honestly don't think so. But, I will tell you something interesting. Whole bunch of us psychics get together on New Year's. Everybody sees what they see. And we all saw something this year that we could not figure out. We saw that neither Biden nor Trump would be at the inauguration. And at that point, that's who it was going to be. But all of us got the same thing. Now what's happened? Trump's imploding. Kamala Harris is like a rocket.
I don't even watch the news, so I don't even know who the second person is.
Kamala Harris is the vice president of the United States. Joe Biden decided that at age 81, he was stepping down.
Wow.
Because he was too old to really be an effective president. Kamala Harris came in, totally changed the energy, and the Democratic Party is like fireworks now. So it is pretty clear that she will be our next president, our first female president. And none of us saw that.
We'll want a female president for a change. Is that the idea? I'm open-minded. You can't offend me politically. I respect every belief, and I don't know the answer. So
probably, I would say that the Democratic Party will take it because people want reproductive freedom. People are tired of hearing that America is nothing but American carnage. They are tired of the violence. They're tired of the bigotry. And the old ways aren't speaking to millennials and Gen Zs. If you saw the Democratic National Convention last night, it was a sea of multiracial faces, men, women, trans. It was gorgeous. Everybody together.
You said that your group saw neither one there. Oh, but
neither Biden nor Trump.
Oh, you didn't see who was the president. You just didn't see either one. I see. Got it.
And we knew that at that point in January, only Biden or Trump would be running for office. So we didn't know how this was going to happen. But when Biden stepped out and Kamala Harris stepped in, that's the change. We saw the change, but we didn't see the details.
And I don't know if you can answer this or not. It's not your expertise, politics. How does one get on the ballot at the last minute? You have to run in the primary, right? But your party can just say, here's our candidate at the last minute.
What happened is remember, she was on the ticket. It was the Biden-Harris ticket. She was going to be his vice president again.
Oh, okay.
So when he stepped down and she was there,
I see.
Then the delegates in each state had to decide, are we good with this? And they were. So last night at the Democratic National Convention, every state and places like Guam, Puerto Rico, that also have delegate votes, all put their votes in for Kamala Harris. And so, yes, by the usual way, she is the Democratic nominee now.
So the other question I got, and I definitely wasn't going to ask this one, but I'll throw it in now because it sounds like it's not going to hurt. The other one was, and I go, are you kidding me? Like, no wonder I don't watch TV. It was, will there be a civil war after the election? I'm like, what? So,
it will not be like the Civil War you knew last time, but the Republican Party has set it up with voter suppression and people who will deny what happens. The Republicans for a long time have known they can't win by popular vote. Trump won by electoral votes.
Yeah, go ahead. Electoral votes.
So,
you mean it'll be a close election?
It will be a close election. And no matter what, whether Trump wins or Kamala wins, especially if Kamala wins, the Trump faction, the MAGAs, Make America Great Again, the ones who were the insurrectionists and attacked
Right.
at Congress in 2021 have been plotting in order to attack again. So yes, I
That's
do
where this
believe there will
person's
be.
fear comes from, but I don't think
Right.
are you
It
seeing
will.
anything in your psychic readings though in terms of, violence after, I mean, a little bit's always the case.
Yes. Yes. What I'm seeing is it would have been much worse had Biden won. Kamala
Mm,
is young, strong. She was prosecutor.
mm.
There will probably be things like mass shootings, bombings. If you know anything about what were known as the Troubles in Ireland for 30 years, it'll be very much like that. But I
Hey,
don't see it lasting more than a year or two.
this brings up a question for you because as a professional, this is what you
Mm-hmm,
have to do every day. You have to clear your head. And me, when I'm
mm-hmm,
trying to use my intuition, everybody, um, say you were trying to go into the place where you channel the open door, you protect it so you're getting good
mm-hmm,
answers from good spirits, and you
mm-hmm.
ask about the future because you're wondering, is it safe to leave the country or just for my own well-being? You're not panicking. This is what you do with the psychic reading. I want to know, is there doom and destruction? If personally, you're a woman or a minority or somebody who is really going to be affected by the election, it's a really strong issue. How do you keep your head out of your intuition and going into channeling the possible future if you're really emotionally, um, you know, uh, have a strong viewpoint? Like,
You have to learn to put your ego aside. And I know I can do this because when I was working with Robert Schwartz, he was doing a chapter on miscarriage and abortion for one of his
mhm.
books. And I channeled that person's higher self. And when I do that, my self kind of goes off and reads a magazine somewhere. So Rob sent me the book before it was published, and I read that chapter and I called him. I said, Rob, I could not have said this. This is against everything I believe. And he said, do you want to do the recording? I said,
Ah,
no.
nice.
So that's an example of when you know how to channel and you go deep,
Hmm.
you will say what is truth, whether it's truth for that person or truth for the situation. Your ego doesn't get in the way.
And then you can play the recording, and your ego can just sit and have popcorn while it listens to it.
Get weirded out.
And you
Yes.
gotta go,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have said that. You can have it back. Just put it on hold. It's kind of like a meditation, right? Just for
Hmm.
10 minutes, I need to. Okay, I know you probably have a busy day with clients, but appreciate you taking the time.
Pleasure.
Details on all your stuff will be in the show notes, and it's really cool and interesting. Also sounds like a little bit of fun work you're doing sometimes, but it's pretty serious because people when they leave a reading with you, they're really gonna do something important with it, hopefully, and not just try to win the lottery or try to find oh, one last thing. I didn't talk about soulmates or finding everyone, because it just popped in my head. What would it do if I was a psychic? Where am I going to meet my next boyfriend or girlfriend? What do you tell
Oh, the
people with
where the
that?
hell is he or she or it
Yeah, what do you
question. I
know?
get that all the time. All right.
Yeah.
Number one, the difference between soulmates and twin flames are huge. Twin flames are people like John and Yoko. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, people that you cannot imagine them with anybody else. Um, Soulmates, all have them. My father was my best friend. He was a soulmate. My last husband, no. My current husband, yes. My spiritual mentor, that she and I have been in and out with each other for 40 years. So she. So just because, don't think you only have one person to love and to marry. Nobody would get divorced if that were the case. So what I do is I show them month by month for about 2, 3 years where the possibilities are.
Mm.
And then they
Nice.
can go out and find them.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. That sounds great. And you'd be hopeful because it'll be this month, next month, this year or not. It's your time to take a break from a relationship, just so don't worry about it to next year. That's practical and helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
I am probably one of the most practical psychics you'll ever see.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Corbie.
I'm delighted. It was great to be here.
Great stuff. Okay. Have a good day. Bye.
Be well.